Demonites and Docutrons, assemble!
Okay, so back in the day, I was way above the wave, man. I traded in the girls for the video games. I played so much Super.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Here we are. Once again, this is the Beav Man. And this is Beav Man in the Dock. And we are coming to you from Renegade Beaver Studios. And with me, once again, let me be more enthusiastic about that. Oh, and here with me today is the Ricker.
Hello, listeners. This is the Ricker.
Is that your like?
It is radio voice.
It is radio voice coming to you from Radioland.
I couldn't stop myself after that intro.
Yeah. With us also is Paper Doc. Yeah, Paper Doc coming to you guys from Renegade Beaver Studios, and I'd like to welcome all of you to my show. It's my show, my really, really big show.
Can we all say hi, Doc? Hi, Doc.
Hello. What do you got to say about, what do you got to say for yourself there, Paper Doc? You know, earlier today, I took a nap, and when I woke up, let me just say the boy was at full attention. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? No, my boy was at full attention. You know what I'm saying? No. What do you mean? I mean, I'm saying that my boy was at full attention. I don't know what that means. Okay, I was pitching a tent. Again, I don't know what you mean. I was pitching a tent. Like, you know, do you know what a tent is? Yeah, I know what a tent. Okay, so imagine, if you will, that I'm laying there, sky-clad, if you will. I don't know what that means either. Sky-clad, for God's sake. Okay, I mean, I'm just getting so frustrated over here. Help me out, Ricker.
I can't help you, Doc. You're flying solo, buddy.
Okay, fine. Here's the deal. I was naked, lying on my bed, in the middle of the day. What were you doing? I was taking a nap, for God's sake. And I woke up, and my man part was fully erect. Okay, so you're saying that your flaccidity was no longer flaccid. Is that what you're saying? You're saying that you had a hard-on. Well, I wasn't trying to be crude about it. I mean, this is like a family show and stuff. It's not a family show. It's an explicit show. Why don't you just say that you woke up with a hard-on? Okay, fine. I woke up with a hard-on. You're a sick bastard, Doc. Fuck, sit the fuck
Jeez,
down.
Doc.
Jesus. God,
have
what
mercy.
the fuck? This is a family show, Doc. Jesus.
I'm
Love your loving Christ, you fucking pervert.
I'm still impressed that he was excited about it. He's how old?
Yeah. And, well, first of all, you know he was lying. Fucking lying, because that guy ain't getting that fucking hard on. Okay. Anyway, last episode on Beav Man the Doc, the Ricker and I talked about our life and how it was affected by Nirvana, Kurt Cobain, and my initial anger, as well as Ricker's initial anger at Dave Grohl for starting the Foo Fighters. Sorry, Dave. Yeah, we know that you listened to the last episode, and since then you haven't reached out to us. But if you could, just reach out this time and let me know that you're okay with me having that initial little bit of anger with you about the Foo Fighters, the Fighters of Foo, if you will.
He's doing a good job.
The Foo Fighter is that Foo Fighters means pilots that have seen aliens. Is that what it is? Is that what that means?
Absolutely no idea.
Fuck, now we gotta look up what Foo Fighters means.
Now I gotta find out what that means.
Go ahead and tell us, talk to us about Nirvana while I look up what Foo Fighters means.
He's gotta look up what Foo Fighters means, and then we will move on with our discussion about Dave Grohl and how we're sorry we dissed him for so many years before we discovered what an awesome human being he was. And hopefully we figure out what the Foo Fighters was, or I'm going to have to start talking to Doc.
Okay, so here, a Foo Fighter is an unidentified flying object of a kind reported by U.S. pilots during World War II, usually described as a bright light or a ball of fire. Interesting.
So a Foo Fighter was a UFO is sort of a code for UFO. I'm seeing a Foo Fighter.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, it's just saying a UFO identified by U.S. pilots during World War II. Fascinating. So I was close, but not even remotely accurately right.
Close, but no cigar.
It's close, but not even right. Okay, so here's the subject that we were going to touch on. And then be prepared because we're going to fucking yell. All right, so here I was, 1994. I was, at this time, I believe I was a door gunner on a Black Hawk helicopter. Door gunner, for those of you who don't know, that means that I had a gun that hung out a door, and that's what you would shoot at people, the big gun, M60 machine gun.
What he's saying is his job was much cooler than most of us.
Yeah, but, it's not like I actually did it other than at ranges and stuff like that. I mean, okay, let me not glorify. I shouldn't have been proud of myself if I was shooting people in the first place. So it was cool. All right. Sort of. Anyway.
Never heard Beefman go PC. Let's go back to it. Cool job.
Cool job. Kind of cool. And chicks dug it. All right.
Chicks dug it.
April 1994 is the year, is a month. We find out Kurt Cobain killed himself. Your thoughts, Ricker?
Previous podcast, I said I don't really remember finding out. I don't know actually when I found out. But almost instantly upon understanding that he was no longer, I without knowing the background of Kurt Cobain, really stopped and wondered why on earth this dude would kill himself. I immediately thought it was an overdose.
Reasonable.
Which was reasonable. He had some run-ins with certain drugs, heroin and whatnot. But I don't really recall. It wasn't like the moment in your life that I actually remember. I'm sure Beefman has a different thought on it.
I remember, I believe when I found out about it, I might have heard it on the news, but I remember my ex-wife telling me about it. And I cannot remember my initial reactions. I honestly think that my initial reaction was that I didn't believe it because, growing up in the Elvis era, if you will, and still having sightings of Elvis to this day,
Yeah.
I think that what I thought was it was either for publicity or it was possible that he wasn't dead, that maybe he faked his own death. So, really, I'm, at this point, it's 1994, I'm 21 years old, and so those fantasy type of ideas were popped in my head. And then, of course, because I don't trust people and I was trained as a killer professionally through the Army, that I also thought that, well, you know what, he probably didn't kill himself, he was probably murdered. That was more reasonable thought process for me than to think that this guy just offed himself.
I actually had the same series of thoughts. When I heard the weapon used, I was pretty much convinced that he didn't kill himself. But none of the current theories had made the airwaves yet, so basically what we knew was how he was found, where he was found, and the weapon that was used, and none of it made sense to me.
We were talking about it at work, and one of the guys in my flight, he said he was big fan of I don't know what category would you put Marilyn Manson and like 9 Inch Nails in musically.
Sort of a electronica metals, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know the right
category.
category.
Sure what category they would fix in. I mean, obviously,
Just call it alternative, basically.
I guess, yeah, maybe like a goth alternative. I don't know.
Alternative
I don't know.
would be a good
Maybe
one, yeah.
we're just making up shit. I don't even. We're just making up shit
It
because
had a beat, and we like to hear
you
it on
can
the
you
radio.
can tell I'm 46 years old. I'm like, what was the categorization of 9 Inch Nails
The
back then?
category was not country.
Right. It was not that we can be sure. And we were talking about it, and one of us said to this guy in our flight, I'm like, what do you think happened? He said, oh, Courtney killed him and Trent Reznor helped. And we're like, Trent Reznor? And they're like, yeah. We're like, the dude from 9 Inch Nails. He's like, yup. And that was the first bizarre theory that I'd heard. And of course, this was not right away. I think this was months later when we were talking about it. Because first, it's more of a disbelief thing. First, you don't believe it. Kind of like, who was the other one that died that I just couldn't believe it when it happened?
Yeah, Chris Cornell.
Yeah, well, but the thing with Chris Cornell when he died, the thing is that we've already lost so many people that every time it pops up, we're like, what the fuck? It's not that I don't believe it now. Now it's like, what the fuck happened? Why the fuck do we keep losing everybody? Like, we lost Tom Petty. I was fucking devastated. We lost Prince. I mean, you lose all these people and you're like, what the fuck? Why do it doesn't stop? It doesn't stop happening. We just keep losing them.
Right. Well, and we're getting to that age where people are going to start kicking off.
Yeah, but these people are kicking off for no fucking reason.
Right.
You're like, I can understand if you were kicking off because you're fucking old as fuck, but not just because that some idiot prescribes you too much meds, or you take too many meds, or you accidentally kill yourself, or you die by erotic asphyxiation. Like, what was it? The guy from INXS?
INXS.
But yet they said he killed him. It was a suicide. I'm like, I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. So I think that when I honestly believe that when I found out Kurt Cobain was dead, I actually got angry. I felt sorry for myself, selfishly.
Because you're not going to get to experience any more of those amazing tunes anymore. Probably the same reason you were mad at Mr. Grohl. Because he was going to keep making music and it had nothing to do with Kurt.
Right. Well, yeah, and I believe the other thing that I was angry about too, looking back on it, and you said it earlier, is that I never saw Nirvana in concert.
Yeah, what a bummer.
And there's no way I would have ever seen Nirvana in concert, because when I first heard them, I was in Germany, and they might have toured in Europe. There was no way I was going to get to go see it.
Right.
One, I was poor. Two, I was in Germany, and I wouldn't have been able to shoot across to England or London or wherever they might have been, which I think they did go there. And even if I could have shot over there, I wouldn't have had the money to go. And in the United States, stateside, it was the same thing. There was no way they were going to be touring at Fayetteville, North Carolina, for me to go see them.
Right.
And I wouldn't have had the money.
And they shot so big so fast that most normal kids our age wouldn't have been able to afford that concert. I mean,
we would have been lucky if we were on the West Coast. We would have seen them.
Right.
We would have had more of
maybe
chance
coming up
them.
or something.
Right. But so I was angry about that. And as the years go by, more and more of the story unfolds, more and more of the theories unfold, more and more. And they continue to this day. And we're 25 years later, going on 26 years later.
That's impossible.
Now, I was saying earlier when we were talking that I've never met anyone personally in my conversations with people that believes that he killed himself.
I don't believe I have, but I did accuse my wife of it.
Accused your wife of killing Kurt Cobain? She was too young.
Be a lot cooler if she did. No, she stands on the fence. She doesn't know what to believe about it, and so I always tell her she doesn't believe it. She believes he killed himself. So I always would like to start an argument about this, because in my brain it didn't happen that way. He didn't kill himself. So I look for that argument. I too have not found anybody that will engage.
And I wonder why people don't engage about that. Is it because that they they don't care? It's not that interesting.
Courtney will shut them down.
Everybody's scared of Courtney. Everybody's scared that Courtney's going to come after him. But isn't that evidence that something was amiss or askew if Courtney shuts you down?
Yeah, a little bit. That's kind
I
of
think
what
I'd be
get out
more
of it.
scared of Hillary Clinton than Courtney Love.
At this point, definitely more scared of the Clintons.
I'm more scared of the Clintons. All right, so my source for today's podcast is information from Love and Death by Max Wallace and Ian Halperin. Also, if you want to see it's somewhat decent documentaries, if you've got Amazon, or if you just want to look them up in general, there is Kurt and Courtney by Nick Broomfield, a documentary from 1998. And Soaked in Bleach, 2015. That's kind of through the eyes of Tom Grant, and that's directed by Benjamin Stadler? I don't know. Can't even read my fucking own handwriting. That's pretty sad. Tom Grant, if you don't know it, is the private investigator who was hired by Courtney Love prior to the death of Kurt Cobain, or when his body was found. So let's walk through the steps here. This is what happened. Okay, remember this. On Beeve Man in the Dock, I am expert of nothing, and rightfully so, because I ain't got that time. What I'm going to talk to you about is the facts that the Ricker and I know as presented from these documentaries and from the book, and we're going to throw in our own personal opinion. It's going to get loud, people. It's going to get loud. So here's what happened, without me going over the dates too much. Tom Grant, sitting in his office, it's like Easter, some shit like that, gets a phone call. On the other end, it's Courtney Love. Now, Tom Grant is basically what I would be nowadays if I got called by some pop star's wife and they said, hey, I need you to go check in on my husband, Dwayne Sherfluffin. And I find out later from my younger counterpart that Dwayne Sherfluffin is a pop music star. And I'm like, I don't fucking know who Dwayne Sherfluffin is. Kind of the same thing. Tom Grant gets a phone call from Courtney Love to say, hey, I need you to find my husband, Kurt Cobain. And he's like, oh, let me see. I'm not sure. I don't know who these people are.
So he had no idea who Kurt was when she...
No.
God, that's amazing.
No, if the guy that works with him was like, dude, you don't know who the fuck that is? You're so old. You are so old right now. So anyway.
Was he an investigator or was he...
He was a private investigator.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, private investigator. He gets called, goes to meet Courtney at the hotel that Courtney's staying at. Courtney tells him, hey, I need you to find my husband for me. He's suicidal. I need to know where he is. I don't know where he is. He checked into rehab, but then he escaped rehab.
Already sounds sketchy to me.
Already sounds a little sketchy. So
what she was saying was need to find him before he rots.
Yeah, I need to find him before he ruins the wood floors in our greenhouse. He takes down the information, starts working the case. He's like, okay, this guy was in rehab. He escapes rehab, which is kind of funny in the first place that Kurt escapes rehab.
He climbed a wall.
Climbs a wall to get out of a rehab. It's a voluntary rehab that he could have just checked himself out of. Right. He could have just walked out the front door. So this is early April. Kurt leaves, and Courtney's given Tom Grant all this information saying, hey, he's suicidal. I know that he's recently bought a shotgun. And he's pretty useless. He can't even catch a cab himself. She says shit like that. She's basically saying that Kurt's a child and can't do anything on his own.
Right. Which,
to me, is, all right, why is she planting all this shit in the investigator's head in the first place? Okay, fair enough. Maybe this is how Kurt Cobain was. Apparently, Kurt lived his entire life before he met Courtney and couldn't do anything on his own. Right. Yet, he didn't really have a home that he was living in. He bounced from place to place, slept under a bridge, but yet couldn't fend for himself. I find that a little bit hard to believe.
I'm not expected to believe his survival skills were as minimal as what she's portraying here in this
Can't
report.
call cab. Don't know what cab is. Money? What money? I don't know what money is.
Money.
I don't know money. All right, so now Tom Grant trying to check her down. She tells him that the credit card was used to buy some plane tickets from L.A. to Washington, where Kurt lives, Seattle, somewhere. Whatever.
Makes sense. He wants to go home.
Wants to go home. She says that he bought more than one ticket. So she's thinking that he's with somebody else. Okay. Gotcha. Tom Grant talks with the resources or the people that she wants him to talk to include people that, come in contact with Kurt, who are his friends. He has no luck finding Kurt and finally says, hey, can I go to Seattle? She says, sure, go ahead. He goes to Seattle, talks to the people that she wants him to talk to. I think one of the guy was Dylan, who's like Dylan, who's like Kurt's best buddy.
He was the remember the OJ case, the blonde haired guy. He was that guy in this story. The Kato Kalin. Yeah.
Or was Callie the Kato Kalin?
Oh.
Callie was the guy who was the nanny for Francis Bean, which I don't know why here's a weird dynamic, right? Francis Bean, their baby, Kurt and Courtney's baby, right? Her nanny is this guy they call Callie, and Callie used to be Courtney's boyfriend. Now, I don't know what Kurt was like, but in my home, I don't generally let my wife's ex-boyfriend be the caregiver for my daughter.
Right. Well, they had a long history with nannies, too. They went through one about every 10 months. So that may have played into it. I've seen a few interviews with the one, and she was just as hooked on all the drugs and stuff as anybody else in Seattle was at the time. So maybe it was a desperate move, or maybe it's just a load of bullshit she used to have him in the house.
Right. I don't know. Yeah, maybe. No, but and I know what you're talking about when you talk about the documentaries where it has the nannies and stuff. And I'm like, well, do we have any proof that they were really their nanny in the first place? Like,
Right.
one documentary that comes to mind is Nick Broomfield's documentary, Kurt and Courtney. And he's talking with this. First, he talks with this lady.
One of the flakiest
who
human beings
knows,
I've ever met.
Who knows someone who was the nanny. I'm like,
Right.
why are we getting information from someone who's not even part of the story? She never met Kurt, never met Courtney, never
They
been
paid
around
her
them.
in cigarettes and heroin.
Right, and she's like living in the basement of some
Right.
whatever. And then they're like, oh, but she's made contact with this person. Now we're going to talk with this person. And you're like, how do we know this person was even their nanny?
And then this person comes on and basically says, I'm scared to talk.
Yeah, I'm scared to talk. And all he ever talked about prior to Kurt's death was Kurt's will all the time. I'm like, well, specifically, what do you mean? I don't know, just will talk.
Courtney saying, make sure my name's on everything.
Right. So what I'm saying about the documentary with Mr. Broomfield is, yeah, whatever. Anyway.
Yeah, we should let that one slide.
We're going to let that
right
slide
off
for
the radar.
just for a minute. Just for a minute, we're going to let that slide. Okay, so going through the... Finally... Tom Grant is saying, hey, why don't we put surveillance on the house in Seattle? And Courtney kept fighting him on that. He's like, why shouldn't I have surveillance on that? Why don't I put PIs that I can get in Seattle and have them watch the house? That's where he's going to go. And she's like, oh, no, he's not going to go there. He's not going to go to the house. Well, why wouldn't he go to the house? It's his fucking house.
Right. That'd be the first place I'd go if I escaped from rehab.
And as a private investigator, why wouldn't you be questioning the motive of the person that hired you if they don't want you to watch the house?
That would be the number one thing that you would do is watch the house.
Right.
That's the emergency baseline thing they do.
Right.
They're at least going to sit outside in a car.
Finally gets to see the house. Finally gets to watch the house. He finally goes to Seattle. He's doing the footwork. He's hanging out with this Dylan dude who's feeding him line. Dylan is the person who bought the shotgun.
Right.
The shotgun's in his name.
And wasn't he's the guy that was walking him around the house, showing him all
Right.
the rooms and
Yeah.
every room but the one.
Right. Yeah, they finally get to go. They're finally in the house, right? So they go in the house. And they went in the house more than once, right? And I might be messing up I'm probably messing up some of the stuff, but
Timelines
Timeline's
irrelevant.
a little
We're getting
bit.
to a
Yeah,
point.
We're getting to the point. The point is this. One of the times that they go to the house, the Dylan goes like through the window. He can shut off the alarms, whatever. They go in. Nothing in the house. There's nothing in the house to indicate that anybody's been there. They're snooping around. They go like up in the mattresses, like in their bedroom. They flip the mattress. They lift the pillows. They move the sheets. They move the blankets, whatever. They find Rohypnol underneath the mattress. Okay? And Rohypnol, here in the United States, we call that the date rape drug if you've never heard of it. And in other words, don't leave your drink unattended, people.
Right.
And Tom Grant's like, what is this? Of course, Dylan knows what it is. He's like, oh, it's a sleeping medicine. It's prescription strength, blah, blah, blah. Bottom line is that's the only thing that they found after they tossed the bed. Okay? They toss the bed, they leave, whatever. Now, why is Rohypnol important? Well, prior to all this shit happening, supposedly, when they were in Rome, Kurt overdosed on Rohypnol.
Right.
So ding, ding, ding. Kurt overdoses on Rohypnol and alcohol. Now, here's another timeline weirdness. When Courtney calls the ambulance or the front desk at the hotel where they are in Rome, which I think it was Rome, it had already been, she is quoted later on saying that she'd checked on Kurt at like 3 or something. There was something wrong with Kurt at like 3 a.m., but she didn't call the ambulance till like 6:30. So there's a 3-hour block of time, basically, where she did nothing when Kurt was gorked and not moving too well.
Right.
Not only that, if you look at the pictures from the ambulance that were snapped of Courtney in the back of the ambulance at like 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning, she's in full-out makeup and looks good at 6:30 in the morning.
And had apparently been dealing with this since, 3?
Since like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So anyway, they go to the hospital, pump Kurt's stomach, and all the reports say that the first thing Kurt asks for is a strawberry milkshake or whatever, because his throat hurt, which it would, because I don't know if people know this. When you pump somebody's stomach, you take this giant tube, basically, and you shove it down their throat into their stomach to pump the stomach. It's not pleasant. It's a very large tube. I've only had to do it a couple times to people. It's a big one. So it hurts the throat. What they don't tell you, but they tell you in the book, is one of the first things that actually happened was Kurt wrote on a pad, and it said, "fuck you," and he gave it to Courtney.
I did not know that.
So why would he say that to her? Why would that be the first thing that actually happens? If it wasn't for the fact that maybe, just maybe, someone slipped that Rohypnol into his drink and gave him a very large dose of it. So this all happens prior, and the report is that it was an accidental ingestion. There was nothing said about this being a suicide attempt. Yet after Kurt dies, one of the first things Courtney says is that thing that happened in Rome was actually a suicide attempt.
Right.
I'm going to feel really bad if it wasn't Rome, by the way.
It was Rome.
It was Rome, okay.
I checked my notes as well because I couldn't remember.
It was Rome. Okay, so that casts a little bit of doubt in general. I'm not saying anything about Courtney. I'm just saying that that's a little bit suspicious, because now we're flipping back to April of 1994 when they're trying to find Kurt. They go back to the house a second time. This time, when they go back to the house, there is a note on the stairs from Callie, who was the nanny, to Kurt. Because apparently, one night, Callie's sleeping in the bed with his girlfriend. Kurt comes in, sits on their bed, and talks to him, which means they knew that Kurt was in Seattle. They had to have known that Kurt was in Seattle, and he communicated that to Courtney, yet Courtney never said to Tom Grant that she knew that Kurt was in Seattle. So they had to have known that he was there. Now, Callie later comes out and says, "Oh, maybe I dreamed it. Maybe I dreamed that Kurt was sitting on my bed."
Under penalty of what? Right. Did he change his story?
Right, exactly. I might not get enough heroin anymore.
I can't even stop myself from being cynical while Beefman talks.
Well, in other words, if I was Tom Grant and all these things are starting to come to light, it doesn't make any sense. If I'm supposed to go find someone and I'm told that they're not there, but then I'm starting to get clues that they were there after the fact, but nobody told me in the first place that he was there sitting on the bed. Okay. They go on all these wild goose chases to different places, and then they're headed up to like a cabin that they have. So they're in the car, head up to the cabin. Him and Dylan, right? They turn on the radio, and they find out on the radio that Kurt's body has been found at his house in the greenhouse. At that point, Tom Grant's like, "What the fuck is the greenhouse?" Turns to Dylan, who's a fucking stoner, and says, "What the fuck is the greenhouse?" Now, he doesn't say that because he's a nice, reserved person, I'm assuming. But he says, "What is the greenhouse?" And Dylan says, "Oh, it's just this little dirty room above the garage." And he says to Dylan, "Why didn't you tell me about it before?" So one of the things that makes Tom Grant look bad as an investigator, and they say this over and over again, it was, when people bash on him, is why didn't he'd been to the house a couple of times? Why didn't he see the greenhouse?
Right.
And if you look at the pictures of the house, it's much like, obviously people don't know what my house looks like, but when you pull into my house, also, there's just a window above my garage. It's kind of like that.
Right.
Sort of
so
like
it just
that.
looks like a loft.
Yeah, it just looks like that. And the only difference is that they've got a stairway that goes up to it, which we do not. So if you were going there on a typical Seattle night, and the authors say they did the same thing because they were a little bit skeptical that Tom Grant would not have seen the room, they drove there on a typical Seattle night. It was raining when he drove there initially. They drove there at night when it was raining and said, yeah, you wouldn't notice that there was a room above the garage.
I feel like an investigator, if there's stairs, especially external stairs that lead up to it, I would have at least popped in there and looked around. I don't feel like... I feel like maybe he was intentionally misled away from the greenhouse experience altogether. I don't think maybe that was
Right.
the case.
Well, if you're going to an unfamiliar surrounding, you've got two options. If you're going to an unfamiliar surrounding by yourself, it would be easier to pick out every nuance of everything.
Right.
Like if I do, obviously, if I was, let me break it down to let me break it down tactically. Let me say that. I'll break it down tactically. If I was going to take a building, for example, I'm going to recon that building before I take it.
Right.
And that might mean a 360 recon or whatever, seeing where the points of entry are. These are all under the sly. So you want to see where all the pointers of entry are and where there's a possibility that you could be engaged by the enemy. As an example, if Tom Grant had gone there by himself, I full out believe that he would have noticed the greenhouse.
I feel the same way.
But being brought by someone who's familiar with the house, they concentrated on going in the house. He trusted that person to show him every part of that he needed to see.
Right. Which was his mistake in the investigation. The guy was clearly not a great person for that tour in the first place.
He has this heroin addict showing me exactly where I need to go.
Yeah, I've got this junkie, and he's going to tell me what rooms I should look in. Maybe send the junkie to the house and just go do my own investigation.
Right. Well, and then if on his end, I'm sure he was looking at it saying, well, these are available resources. She's trying to help me with this. And he's not maybe he started to be a little bit suspicious, but...
Well, at that point, there was no reason for suspicion. He was just looking for a missing person.
No, but the smart thing that Tom Grant did, though, was when he started to get like a little inkling that stuff wasn't right, was he started tape recording every conversation he had with pretty much everybody.
Good move.
Okay, so the second time they went to the house, I believe she had sent them out there to find the shotgun. She said there was like a hidden compartment in the bedroom or something like that. So they went to find the shotgun. Didn't find the shotgun, but that's when they found the note from Callie. That still seemed like a weird note. And you can find these notes. You can go online. You can look this stuff up and read the notes. They're just a little bizarre. They seem forced. Like they were actually left there for Tom Grant to find, not for Kurt to find.
Possibly after the fact.
So anyway, that takes us back to, like I said, they hear on the radio that Kurt's been found. He's dead. He found him in the greenhouse. Okay. They hightail it back to the house. Police are there. Now here's where it gets goofy. And now I'm not a big believer that the Seattle Police Department is part of a conspiracy to cover up the murder of Kurt Cobain. That I don't believe.
No, I don't think there was much involved there.
I just think that they did a bad job.
Terrible fucking job.
I just think they did a shitty job. I don't think that they're part of any type of conspiracy. Here's the thing. They find that out. Tom Grant asks to speak with the lead investigator, and they just blow him off. Now, if I was a police officer and somebody said to another police officer, and I'm the lead investigator, I would think that if somebody said, hey, I've got information on this case, I think that I'd probably want to talk to them.
Maybe.
But that's not what happened.
You don't necessarily know how much ego is involved either. Maybe stay out of my investigation was more of a response.
Right. And that was basically that's what you think the response actually was. But if I'm looking at it about, I want all the information I can possibly get. This guy could be a crackpot, but is it going to hurt me to talk to him for 5 minutes?
Yeah, even if it's useless, take some notes.
So, in other words, what I'm saying is Tom Grant really didn't have the access that he thought he would have, and he really didn't have any cooperation with the Seattle Police Department. Now, I will say this for the Seattle Police Department. Obviously, I'm sure that most police departments are used to dealing with private investigators or getting information from private investigators that are not like Magnum PI.
Right.
In general, probably a lot of them are a pain in the ass, and maybe they're not that helpful.
I mean, what do you have to do to call yourself a private investigator?
Not much. I could be
take
one.
Out an ad in a paper.
Right. I could take a simple test and be one, I'm quite sure. Here's the bottom line, though. He was not able to give this information to them. They weren't really being collegial with him, et cetera, et cetera. What we know for sure, though, is that when they walked in, and Kurt's body was found. Here's another suspicious thing. Kurt's body was found by an electrician who was sent there to put up security lighting. And he was called by Courtney to do that. Why? Here's why, I speculate. Because Tom hadn't found the body.
Correct. And
somebody needed to find the body. And who finds the body? This electrician. He goes up there, sees, pant leg, sees some Converse, sees that somebody did, and instead of, here's the fucked up part, he calls his boss. Now, I personally would not call my boss.
I think 911 would have been my first response.
911's the first thing that I'm going to
I
probably
know, you never know what someone's going to do under panic. I'll try not to be cynical yet.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, and this is part where I'm glad that I didn't find the body, because I would not have just called. I would have called as I'm rushing in there to make sure that person's alive. That's, though, because, I'm a nurse practitioner. I'm not just going to let somebody be dead in front of me if there's something I can do. I would have compromised the scene, unfortunately.
He was quoted as saying he thought it was a mannequin at first, too, which maybe he was just complete mess.
Yeah, I think, he saw blood or something like that.
Right.
So, yeah.
I'm trying to give this guy the benefit of the doubt, but it sounds to me like he just freaked out and didn't know what to do.
Well, but he didn't make a dick move either, though. So he calls his boss, and what does his boss do? He calls a radio station. Like, I sure hope this is going to help me get some Leonard Skinner tickets, man, but I got to tell you.
Right.
My guy just found a body. And I don't know if you know this or not, but it's Kurt Cobain. And that's what happened. So,
I didn't know Jimmy Swaggart was there.
Anyway, so that's a little suspicious. Now let's talk about the crime scene itself. Crime scene is reported that there was a chair barricading the door. Kurt's body found in there, still gripping the shotgun between his legs. And off to the side, we've got a cigar box with stuff for shooting heroin.
Right, his whole kit was in there.
But it wasn't laying about, it was placed back in there. So Kurt was really careful about the scene being nice and neat, and that his drug kit was put back together before he shot himself. He's like, it's more important for this to be a nice, tidy scene before I shoot myself. I don't need to leave my heroin strewn about. I don't need to leave that out.
Let us not neglect the fact that he had enough heroin in him that he couldn't have picked up the box if he wanted to before he organized all that stuff.
Right. So there's the scene, right? Shotgun between his legs. His kit's put back away. Wallace on the ground. Supposedly there's a chair in front of the doors, barring entry. Okay. Now, that seems like a standard suicide scene, I guess. The problem is they say it's a suicide before they do any investigating. And instead of doing that, they're supposed to say that it's undetermined. The death is undetermined. Until they do their full investigation, until they do the toxicology and all those other things. But that's not what happened. What they said was, here's a rock star who killed himself.
Right. And the first guy that had a chance to react, his first thought was, how fast can we get this to the airwaves? Not, what can we do that's correct in this situation?
Tragic scene. Rockstar kills himself. Goes out on the airways. Now here's the goofy stuff. And we want you to do this investigation on your own, researching it on your own. Yes. Obviously, don't just take my word for it. Here's the things that make me really angry about it. Without getting too much into the timeline, without pointing the fingers. Here's the things that make me angry about it. The things that make you... Remember what it was? The things that make you go, Things that make you go, Okay. If I'm going to put myself in the mind of somebody who wants to kill themselves. Okay. Here we go. 1. Choice of shotgun. 12 gauge. If I'm going to pick a shotgun, I'm going to pick a 12 gauge. Why? There's very little chance that I'm going to screw it up. Now, a lot of people think it's hard to screw up a suicide. That's not true. You could jerk at the last minute. You could shoot your face off and not shoot your brain. You could live in a botched suicide. That happens.
Absolutely.
12 gauge, I'm going to go with either, maybe a double-aught buck, triple-aught buck, or I'm going to go with a slug. Reason why? I've got a large amount of metal going up through my mouth into my brain to kill me. Okay? It's gonna blow out the back of my head.
Right.
That's the plan. Kurt has a 20 gauge. Not a big shotgun. Okay? Fine. That was his choice for... supposedly, he bought this gun because his guns had been confiscated earlier due to a domestic complaint. And so he bought this gun, and supposedly this was for home protection. Now, I can sort of see the 20 gauge for home protection if you are not planning on killing your intruder. If you're going to load it with like birdshot or something like that. Okay, maybe. Or maybe it's just fun to shoot, target practice wise.
Just straight up ignorance, not knowing that it's not going to kill your target, perhaps.
Right. Well,
how much did they know about guns?
But Kurt did know a lot about guns.
Did he?
Kurt liked guns. He mentioned that several times, that he just liked guns. And he would just go outside and shoot his guns.
Okay.
But Courtney insisted that Kurt didn't like guns and didn't know anything about guns. Which I find interesting.
Still trying to not be cynical.
Still trying not to be cynical. Okay. Choice of shotgun. I'm not saying that's so great. Now, back to your point, the Ricker. How many heroin addicts kill themselves accidentally? Or accidentally overdose?
Accidental overdose is in the thousands, I'm sure. Especially fresh out of rehab, where they think they can go back to the regular dosage that they've been taking before rehab. But the killer is not going to be a shotgun, it's going to be the needle.
Right. Well, and then I look at it a different way also. Medically, I look at it and say, well, if you take countries where heroin's legal, and there are countries where heroin's legal, where the government can supply it to you in clean needles because they know that it's a problem already.
That's crazy talk.
But there is. Most heroin addicts are very good at shooting heroin.
Right.
In other words, they know how much they can use.
Right.
So my suspicion would be that the majority of people that overdose on heroin get bad heroin. Or they get, what do they call it, dirty heroin? Or it's too pure. In other words, it's too pure and they accidentally kill them. Not because of what they did, but because they bought a product that was too pure, not cut enough. So that would be the accident. But I don't think it's an accident on how much they give themselves. It's just the purity of it.
Yeah, there's never any accident with how much they give themselves. They certainly wouldn't experiment with it to the point of no return, I wouldn't think.
Your point is that the amount of heroin that Kurt injected, he would not have been able to pick up the shotgun.
That is the point. The medical examiner has stated numerous times there's not even a window for opportunity where he would have, with that amount in him.
Well, the medical examiner says that he could have. But the independent medical examiners that were not the ones who performed the autopsy and the people who are experts on it and the experts on toxicology have said he had so much heroin in his system, even if he was a heroin addict that shot up every single day, there's no way that he would have been able to pick up the shotgun because of that. And here is the argument for that people don't understand. What you don't understand is this. When you inject an IV drug like heroin or like prescription morphine or prescription Dilaudid or whatever, like and I've injected lots of people intravenously, that drug just has to cross the blood-brain barrier. And let me tell you how fast it happens. It happens with the beat of your heart. It's that fast. I used to do sedations on people that had to be intubated or whatever in the emergency room emergently, and I would say count back from 10, and they would go and they were out. That's how fast it happens. It happens with the beat of your heart. It's that fast. So for him to inject that much medication or that much heroin is one thing. But let's not forget this. Let's say that he could stay conscious for a second. The needles were put back in the box. Everything was put back away. The band was taken off of his arm. Everything was put back. So he would have had to take the time to do that and then pick up the shotgun and shoot himself. Now, there's an argument out there from some douchebag who says, oh, well, this same amount of drug is in this person. And yet here they are standing on one foot and hopping up and down. Well, listen, fucktard. You can't compare those two things because that person that you're saying, and Nick Broomfield does this in his documentary. That's his big thing. He shows that in his documentary. Well, let me tell you something, fucktard. That guy took oral methadone. It takes about 45 minutes, if you're lucky, for your body to break that down, one pass through the liver for it to start affecting you.
So he's comparing a pill form to an injection and trying to claim it's the same, and it's not even the same drug.
Yeah, and the fact that is considered any basis of evidence whatsoever that you could have that level of drug in your system is completely fucking ridiculous and makes me want to go insane. So again, he wouldn't have had time to do that. Now, here's the other thing. Now, let's just say that we can suspend disbelief and we believe that it's possible that Kurt could have put those medicines, or that drug, and all of his drug paraphernalia back in his little drug kit and pick up the shotgun to shoot himself. Fine. I'll say that that can happen.
Maybe he was a trained heroin professional.
Here's the thing. The ejection port on most shotguns, unless you buy a left-handed shotgun specifically made, the ejection port on a shotgun, the ejection port on a shotgun is on the right side of the gun.
Beefman has picked up his shotgun to illustrate this.
Picked up my shotgun to illustrate that for the listening audience, the ejection port, where the shell gets ejected after you've shot a round, comes out the right side of the shotgun. Are you following me, listening audience? Okay. The shotgun was found gripped in Kurt's hand. He had his hand around the barrel with the ejection port of the shotgun facing to his right. Okay? Facing to his right.
So it was not a left-handed shotgun.
It was not. You can find pictures of the shotgun. You can find verified pictures of the shotgun online.
He was left-handed. So
okay.
we'll just play devil's advocate and clear that up right directly.
Gotcha. Oh, that's true. He did play that. Okay. So his hand gripped around the barrel of the shotgun, ejection port to the right, which means with the ejection port to the right, that means that the bottom of the shotgun is facing away from him. The top of the shotgun is facing towards his chest. Why is that important? Because that's the most effective way, honestly, to put a shotgun in your mouth. If you flip it over, the angle is different, and there's a good chance that even if you shot in your mouth, you would actually shoot through your neck and not shoot through your brain. I don't suggest that people try this at home to see what I'm talking about with the angle, but that is the most effective way to do it. Now, here's the kicker. 1, the shotgun was loaded with 3 shells. Did Kurt feel like he needed to reload? Why load 3 shells, Kurt?
We can again play devil's advocate. We'll assume it was already loaded.
We'll assume it was already loaded.
I'm finding reasons here and still trying not to be cynical.
2, as Kurt pulls the trigger, the shell, the spent shell, would have been shot out the right side of the shotgun. The spent shell was found to Kurt's left.
Boom. Right there. Any investigator should have been all over it like a fat kid on a cupcake. Right there.
To me, no matter what anybody says, that is the biggest evidence.
Nothing in physics makes that make sense. And I've been trying not to be cynical since we started.
Now, you might ask yourself, well, how do the police reason that this actually happened? And I'm going to tell you how they reason it happened. They say that the gun was not actually upside down in Kurt's hand. It was the other opposite way. So in other words, the bottom of the gun would have been facing Kurt's chest as he grabbed it and pulled the trigger. And as he did so, he rotated the gun in his hand. And that's how the shell would have got flown off to the other side. I don't know how that would be possible after you just shot yourself in the fucking head, that you would just naturally do that, because naturally he would have just gripped down harder and not rotated his hand, most likely. It just doesn't make sense. So even if you disregard the amount of drugs in Kurt's system, what you can't disregard, in my opinion, is where that shell landed. And I've thrown a lot of rounds downrange. I know where they go. They don't just all of a sudden end up on the other side of the room. It would have to do some amazing bank shot to get thrown over to there.
I hope some listeners doing a pros and cons list right now. Because so far there's nothing on the positive side here for having killed himself that we can justify.
Now again, why do they think that Kurt killed himself, and why do they not even entertain the possibility that he was murdered? Here's their defense. The door was locked. So how would the killer have gotten out of that room? Because the only access point was through the doors that led out of the green room, apparently. Here's the thing. and they said that there was a stool barricading the door. But the pictures show that they released that shows that stool was not in front of the doors that were the entry point. They were in front of another window. So that's taken out of context, and that's been reported over and over and over and over again.
Right.
That door was a simple push-button lock. So in other words, somebody could have killed Kurt, locked the door, and pulled the door closed right behind them and walked out of the green room or down the stairs or the green room. Yeah. So if that doesn't put enough doubt in anybody's minds about whether or not he killed himself and whether or not the case should actually be opened up again and not handled by the Seattle Police Department, no offense to them, but it should be handled by an independent agency so that we can get some fresh eyes on it that are not biased in any way. And I don't blame the Seattle Police Department because nobody wants to botch a case that huge and show any mistakes they made. But for God's sake, when you've got 25 years of people trying to figure out what the fuck happened, and you've got real evidence out there and people that have given up, basically, Tom Grant has basically given up his life and almost gone bankrupt to try to show that this needs to be looked at. And I'm not saying that Courtney did it in the first place. I'm just saying I don't think the guy killed himself.
Right.
We just want some fucking closure, for God's sake.
We don't need to say Courtney did it, but it needs to at least be brought to attention that he didn't, I think.
Yeah, I think that would help everybody. I think that we just need to say that the possibility exists that he didn't kill himself. And to me, he didn't. Whether he was sad, whether that was an intent or not, the amount of drugs that he had in his system, he could not have put away. He could have picked up the shotgun probably, but sure as hell he didn't put all that shit away and then pick up the shotgun to shoot himself. And the position the position of the casing does not fit the way they found his body.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they not discover any fingerprints whatsoever?
That's true. There was no fingerprints.
Not even his.
There's no, yes, not even his.
Nowhere near the trigger were there fingerprints.
And they dispel this also. They're like, oh, well, if you wash your hands really good, you won't leave fingerprints on a shotgun.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say Cobain was least concerned about washing his hands.
Especially if he just shot up a shitload. I'm like, hey, man, I get to go shoot up.
Right.
No. Here's my theory. My theory is this, and this is the theory that I think is held by most people, is Kurt was dead before that shotgun blast ever hit him.
I agree.
Kurt was dead from a major ingestion of heroin, either that he did himself or that someone did to him. I'm going to say that he didn't do it. Why would he inject that much? Kurt knew what he was doing. And if you want to read the copies of the wording of everything, that the quote suicide note that was left behind, that note, it's not a suicide note. Never once does he mention any type of suicide note. And not only that, without us going into too much detail and making this a 5-hour podcast, the writing at the bottom of the note is not consistent with Kurt's handwriting.
Right. It almost sounds like if you read the letter, it's addressed to his childhood imaginary friend. This seems more like a journal entry than a note to me. And then the stuff at the bottom definitely was not the same handwriting, whether it was written by him at all, or the first part was written by him as sort of a journal entry or venting or whatever it was he was doing, and then someone made it fit the situation, because we won't call it a crime quite yet. It doesn't make any sense. None of that makes any sense at all.
No, it seems like the note is actually a goodbye to his fans, that he's, because of Nirvana breaking up.
Yeah. I couldn't remember what was said in the note, and I didn't want to get too far into it because I was afraid I was messing it up.
Now, the goal of the podcast was not for us to solve anything. Honestly, it was just to get you back interested in the case of Kurt Cobain and maybe to generate some interest out there and let you know that we think that he didn't kill himself.
Right. Right.
And also to tell you how much we love Nirvana. And to tell you that we just want interest. We just want people to be interested in it. Maybe if there is a push for it, we can actually get some mystery solved in our lifetime. Shit, we still don't know who killed JFK.
Right.
We don't know if Elvis is really out there working at a Burger King. We don't know who killed John Benet Ramsey. But you know what? I think this one could be solved.
I think all the puzzle pieces are right there.
Yeah, I think there's enough information out there from what Tom Grant did for everything that he dug up and the information that he still has and the people close to him saying that Kurt was not suicidal. The idea that Kurt was suicidal was placed in everybody's head by Courtney.
Right. because an overdose was perceived to be a suicide attempt.
Right. And maybe I can understand that there is a motive for Courtney to have been involved in the death of Kurt Cobain. But again, does that much evidence really point to Courtney? It points to her knowing something, but it doesn't necessarily point to that she did it.
I'll concede to that. I think personally she had a plan from the beginning. She had lists of how she was going to accomplish things in her life, and that was part of it. Not the killing part, but the befriending and marrying someone that was already famous type of thing, and then getting rid of them or divorcing them, or however she wanted to achieve that. So.
Right, and sadly, to me, that just makes Courtney driven in a different way. I mean, she had a plan. That doesn't make her necessarily any different from most of the people in show business, I guess.
I guess you're right. She was that kid with a dream, and she wanted to accomplish it the easiest path possible.
Honestly, that's not any different from anybody having a dream for career goals. It's just a different mindset, I guess.
I guess.
It's not my mindset, but I can understand why some people would have that mindset. It's an ambition. It's a different type of ambition.
All right, we'll concede there.
But again, I'm not saying that Courtney did it. What I'm saying is I don't know who did it, but I know in my heart that Kurt Cobain did not commit suicide because the evidence doesn't point to suicide, and they rushed to make that judgment. Here's another thing that will make you kind of get thrown off the rails a little bit. The person that performed the autopsy on Kurt was known to Courtney. He was a friend of Courtney Love's. Another thing to make you go, is this. And we should really I want to do a story on that. I want to do a podcast on this also. This is something that I'm going to have to really research. And Kristen Pfaff, or Paff, if you will, was Hole's bassist on one of their albums. And prior to Hole going on tour, and she had already said she was not going to go on tour with them, according to family. Kristen Pfaff was found dead of a heroin overdose in the bathtub in her apartment. Now, it is well known that she was a classic bassist and had a really good sound, but she was also very close. She was befriended by Kurt, and was a really good friend of his. And there's a possibility that their friendship was conceived by Courtney as something that was not appropriate. It wasn't that they weren't having an affair or anything that anybody knew of, but there could have been a jealousy factor there. And she also said that she wasn't going to tour with them and she was done with Hole. She was going to go back to her band. And then we find her dead by a drug overdose. Now, here's where it gets a little crazy on that. The person who performed her autopsy, same person that performed Kurt's autopsy.
Maybe you say it with us this time.
Again, does this point to Courtney? No. What it points to is some douchebag who didn't do his fucking job. And that's what gets me. Yes.
The shoddy investigation leaves everything wide open, and that's why we're having this conversation right now.
Why would, and like I said, this is why we want to delve into Kristen a little bit, is Kristen had left Hole, had returned home to her family, had gone through rehab, was clean. She went back to collect her stuff from her apartment and died of a drug overdose, while her family friend or family or brother or whatever was waiting for her in the car. And someone, I think it was one of the band members of Hole, went in to see her, quote, see her, and came out, and then they found her dead. Coincidence? I don't know. But again, just another tragedy rolled into the legacy, if you will, of Kurt Cobain. And Trent Reznor was nowhere to be found at the time either. So I don't think he's involved, by the way.
he just happened to be unlucky enough to maybe date her once. And he probably regrets that as well.
Yeah. All I'm saying is this. I don't think Kurt did it. So Kurt, if you're a ghost, could come back and visit us and let us know what really happened, because the evidence doesn't match up.
For someone from the younger generation that's listening to this and maybe didn't know all this stuff, this would be a real interesting thing to investigate. This would be something to really dig up some facts on.
Well, I think you make a good point, though, also. This might actually be the best way to go, is to take people that know nothing about this story and for them to investigate it and throw new eyes on it, basically to throw, what do you call that? What's it mean when somebody has nothing to gain, nothing to lose? They're
non-biased.
Yeah, the non-biased opinion for them to look at it and just say, hey, this is how things really are. If you know nothing about the facts, it's kind of like sitting on a jury that you know nothing about because you're going to see everything fresh and brand new without being influenced by others.
Right, or the fact that you were a fan and you just can't believe it, because that will taint your opinion as well.
Exactly. If you took people who knew nothing about the case and had them look at it, what conclusions would they come to? And would it be enough to open up an investigation again? I think it would.
It would be a super cool thing to do from someone with a non-biased standpoint, because everything I've seen has been somebody who has something to gain or lose by this situation.
Exactly. And it's just like reading the books also, or watching the documentaries, you're still going to get that skewed viewpoint of the people who created that product.
Correct.
I like the book Love and Death because they're questioning everything. They do say about how, well, we were kind of suspicious of this, but then we saw this, and they're still giving both sides of the story, which is good, but still it's not conclusive evidence one way or the other. I think the biggest thing to me is the trajectory of that showcasing and the amount of drugs in his system, and the fact that instead of saying that the death was undetermined and doing their due diligence to figure everything out, they just said, hey, it's a suicide.
Right.
And that bothers me.
The case was botched from day one, from the beginning.
All right, so we just basically touched on it a little bit, gave you the highlights, gave you your opinions, because otherwise this podcast could go on for hours and hours and hours, and I could spout off facts and flip through a book, but I'm not going to do that. What I want you folks to do, you Beavenites and Docutrons, is get out there and do your own reading, watch your own documentaries, and let me know what you think. Because like I said, I've never actually ran into anybody that I've ever talked to who actually gave a shit about Nirvana and Kurt Cobain that said that, oh yeah, he killed himself. I don't know. Maybe I'd have to throat punch him if that happened. Or taint kick him, throat punch him. I don't know.
I have not met anyone as well, but I would be a lot less violent if I did.
You'd be less violent than me. A good point. All right then. Well, thanks for listening. This has been Beav Man in the Dock with the Ricker and the Beav Man. And as always, I don't know, keep your powder dry and look to the horizon. May the force be with you. And adios, mooch fuckos. Good Lord, say goodbye.
Nanu, nanu.
Pika pika.